good morning, good afternoon, depending on whether you're West Coast, East Coast time zone. Wonderful to see many old colleagues, friends, partners here, and also many new faces. As a quick background, in case you're wondering about my strange, weird accent, I'm born and raised in Copenhagen in Denmark. I haven't lived there for 22 years. For the last 20-odd years, I've lived and worked on 5 different continents, including Denmark, South Africa, Middle East and Turkey, Thailand and Asia, and for the last 7 years here in the US. I have worked in hardware, in software. Peter, I worked for NASPAS, and also I was involved in the Tencent transaction. So it's kind of fun to hear you, Peter, talk about Tencent and NASPAS. I also spent 14 years working for originally a small little software company in Seattle, Washington, now a pretty big cloud company in Seattle, Washington, Microsoft. And then for the last almost a year, I have worked at Dropbox. So I'm here to talk about how to go to market. And specifically, I'm going to zoom in on the channel, or two-tier distribution, a part of the channel that I understand pretty well, and I'm excited to see many folks here from Ingram as well. Now, let's put all the bad jokes about my shoulder behind me. Yes, I did fall off my mountain bike. I am notorious for being very clumsy. So this time I broke my shoulder, but the next time it will be something else. This photo is a few years back. I was a little bit younger back then. This is a photo taken in Denmark. And this is taken outside where I used to work. My first real job, besides being a bartender and delivering newspaper, was managing a windsurfing store. Now, this is back in the late 80s. So like quite a few years back. And back then, in this little two-person shop on the beach, we shared a phone, an analog phone, with the plumber next door. We didn't have a computer, we didn't have a calculator, we had an invoice book. You would literally, with a pen, write, and that's kind of how you ran the business. Now, when you work in that space of an old-school analog business, you could be a local player, a local small business, but that's really where it ends. Back then, you couldn't really grow, you couldn't really compete, you couldn't really do anything big with a small business. Now, as you think about what you do today, what so many companies do today, you can turn what was a small business into a global micro-enterprise. With the cloud, with your solutions, with Dropbox, with Google, many other great platforms and solutions in the cloud out there, you can now act, behave, interact, run your small business as if you were a global micro-enterprise. You can afford to have the same solution as if you were a Fortune 500 company. So technology truly is changing small business. We are together changing small business. I get to travel quite a bit. I've been in global roles for the last almost 20 years. I've lived in quite a few places, and what I see wherever I've traveled, wherever I lived, small businesses out there really are very much the same. They initially count in thousands, then in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and of course with the technology they can utilize today, they want to grow up and count in millions and billions. And I'm going to zoom here. I'm even going to go in and talk about trillions in the next few slides. You challenged us this morning about millions, right? So let's go billions and trillions as well. Now, as a quick background to make sure I can get to the trillion point. A few years back, there was a very small startup, Drew and Arash, the founders of Dropbox, had an idea. They had this idea that, hey, there's got to be an easier way to share content, to store content, to work together, to collaborate together. They created Dropbox, figured out smart ways to share content across the platform, interfacing into many, many providers like yourself. So here's the first trillion number, actually half a trillion. I'm going to be a little bit modest here. Half a trillion are the number of API calls that Dropbox gets on an annualized basis. That is 16,000 API calls a second. So as Peter was just talking about platforms and APIs and the importance of that interconnected world that the customers out there are looking for, looking at the volume that is taking place through a platform such as Dropbox really tells a story of the importance of us, all of us in this room here, working together to make sure that the small business customers out there have a fantastic technology experience. Dropbox today have 500 million, we just crossed 500 million, 500 million users. We're also pretty pleased to say, talking millions, that we now have 8 million businesses every day that do that they get value out of Dropbox and do their business on Dropbox, and have more than 150,000 paying business customers. So a business that has scaled, but again, as Sunil was saying this morning, we all want to start one day, we all want to grow up one day and become Google or Microsoft and count paying customers in millions. That's far more fun, of course. Now, here's really the meat I wanted to get to. At Dropbox, we've embraced what some people call multi-channel or omni-channel go-to-market or sales strategy. So in classic Bay Area, Silicon Valley approach, we have a very strong, at Dropbox, a very strong self-serve engine. Go to dropbox.com. You can go and find the product, do a trial, buy, love, like the product. That's a very vibrant business force, one we continue to invest significantly in, both in North America and many other countries across the world. Very high growth business. And again, as Sunil was saying this morning, small businesses out there, they're innovative. They embrace technology really, really fast, particularly newly formed small businesses. So this is certainly an area where we're finding a lot of growth. And that self-serve engine, very simple, not overcomplicated model, really is scaling nicely for us as a business. We also see that some small businesses, some SMBs, they do want to have just a little bit of a helping hand. So we do find that there's quite a bit of traffic that's being generated off our websites across the world that drives click-to-chat, inbound calls, where small or medium-sized business just want to have a little bit of a helping hand. So that certainly also is an area we're investing in. This is an area we have a global set of hubs in place in Japan, in Sydney, Australia, in Dublin, Ireland, and in Texas and here in San Francisco, to make sure that from a hub-spoke model perspective, we can cover all the critical mass countries in the world from an inbound perspective. Over the last few years, we've also significantly invested into building a classic direct outbound sales motion in Dropbox. So we built a classic mid-market, mainly tele-based, as well as a classic enterprise direct sales team. It's something we continue to invest in. It's something we continue to make a lot of progress in and win a lot of large customers. Something we feel really proud about. But coming back to what Sunil was talking about in the opening this morning, we play in a game where we aspire. We aspire to find a way of capturing, how much was it, 600 billion you were talking about? $600 billion. We aspire at Dropbox to get a meaningful size of that. And in that journey, we realized that when we want to address the 500 million users that we have today at Dropbox and convert them into a pay-for model, you have to make sure that wherever those users, wherever those small businesses, medium-sized businesses are talking technology, whether they're doing themselves online, through peers, associations, or through channel, we want to make sure that we are there and we transact with them. Now, what many of you know is the channel today, the two-tier channel, the classic reseller, the MSP, the hoster, the VAR, the CSP, the cloud solution provider. Well, there's more than 250,000 of those across the world. And those providers today are effectively still the outsourced IT department for more than half of the SMBs in the world. So if you don't talk to that set of partners, effectively at least half the market globally in SMB, you're not talking to them. So we realized at Dropbox we had to change that. We engaged into a set of discussions with a number of potential partners across the world to understand what they could offer, what type of reach they had into classic resellers, system providers, hosters, managed service providers, cloud service providers, value-added resellers, you name it. And in the end, we, as we looked at two-tier channel partners, we ended up working with, that was interesting, we ended up That's kind of funny, right? Do you realize I worked for 14 years for Microsoft until recently, and it just crashed on me? That's kind of funny, right? Thank goodness I work for Dropbox now. It makes my life easier as a presenter, right? But as I was saying, we went through an assessment of the market to understand how do we, as still in relative terms, a smaller company relative to the Googles, AWSs, Microsofts, Apples of the world, how do we scale in a fast, globally inclusive manner? And that's what we chose for a couple of unique markets. That is interesting, right? We chose for a couple of unique markets to partner with a couple of unique partners, SoftBank in Japan, for example, but specifically at a global level, including the US, we chose to work with what some of you may associate as being an old-school IT distributor, but someone who is reinventing themselves to become a real cloud distributor, Ingram Micro. So we're in the process right now, together with Nimish, Tariq, and the team from Ingram Micro that you'll hear from tomorrow, in rolling out a globally fully automated platform that allows us to interact with, right now, 2,700 partners, but within a couple of quarters, we hope, tens and tens of thousands of partners. And the math is really simple. It comes back to simple data points. Sunil mentioned that there are around about 20 million SMBs in the US. The number globally is 200 million. That's a kind of a loose number. Half of those are computerized today. The other half is not, but they will be computerized tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, and they'll go straight onto a smartphone, straight onto the cloud. But there are 100 million SMB customers in the world today. And if you think of those, round about half of those being serviced today by two-tier channel, by resellers, you've got to find a way to address those by finding those resellers. So for us, the math is very simple. We only have a few thousand people at Dropbox, but scaling through a distributor, who in turn can reach 10,000s of resellers, who employs hundreds of thousands of sales representatives, who can then reach those tens and tens of millions of customers, potential customers out there. That's how you build a global, scalable business. Now, this is pretty unconventional. I won't say that I'm sleepless at night because of that. I am sleepless at night. But it is pretty unconventional for a born-in-the-cloud Silicon Valley company like Dropbox to go, which could be seen on the surface of things as old-school, conventional two-tier channel. I think reality is this. There are parts of the two-tier channel today that is conventional, and that may not be moving at the speed that the customers are and that the market are. But there certainly are many, many resellers out there that are moving fast, that are at the forefront of the cloud, truly understands the value it brings to end customers. And certainly there's also a small number of classic tech, telco, distribution type companies like Ingram that understands times are changing, and they've got to build a new platform that can help many of you in this room to scale your business. So look, it's an interesting journey. I'm super curious to hear feedback from you, thoughts from you on where you're at as you look at how you go to market. As I said, it's pretty unconventional for a born-in-the-cloud Silicon Valley company like Dropbox to go two-tier channel beyond what we're doing from a self-service perspective and a direct perspective. I encourage you to think about it for the sake of your business. Are there merits in considering this with a partner like Ingram, could be Synex, could be other distributors, to find a way to fast scale your business globally without having to hire hundreds and hundreds of sellers. So with that, those are my slides, although, well, we have one slide working now. Those were my slides. I wanted to make sure there was ample time left over to get your feedback on, do you see a play in the space? What have you tried? What have you experienced? So with that, I'm going to open up to questions if there are any.